Well, the Fox News Tonight Common Sense Department is skeptical about President Biden's latest campaign strategy, where he repeatedly talks about the early days of COVID. The goal, of course, is to paint former President Trump in a negative light by saying that Trump, quote, didn't care much about science and reason during the pandemic that went on to claim 1 million lives. Has nobody reminded Biden that 750,000 of those lives were lost on his watch? As for following the science, shouldn't that phrase be packaged up and placed in an old comedy museum right next to the silent movies of the Keystone Cops, only to be brought out during public displays of satire and screw-ups? Remember, it was the science that had us all wearing a mask, putting useless, shabby pieces of paper on our face to signal how deeply we cared. It was the science that shut down the schools for 2 years, propagating a learning loss that could take decades to restore. It was the science that had President Biden calling it the pandemic of the unvaccinated, even though vaccines did not stop you from getting or spreading COVID. It was the science that gave us 6 feet of separation that Fauci now says was a distance pulled out of thin air. And if you disagree with the science, you were censored, meaning it was never science, it was always dogma. Common Sense thinks President Biden should keep an eye on his dogma, lest he step in something unpleasant. Let's bring in the president and founder of Parents Defending Education, Nicole Neily, along with board-certified medical doctor Houman Hamadi. Great to have you both on here tonight. We'll get back to Common Sense in a minute, but I want to bring this up because the border crisis, talking about the schools, is kind of interesting here because the Border Protection said this about the schools and the story we just did with Christina. Watch.
Santa Teresa Middle School is one of many areas that these migrants jump into without, thinking of where they're going through because they're trying to evade arrest.
Yeah, I mean, Nicole, this is one of those things where when you have illegal immigrants going into schools, you have no idea what they're doing, trying to get away from the cops. You have no idea what their intent is, and to be around kids is a very bad recipe.
Absolutely, and this is not just happening in border counties. I have been filing public records requests across the country because we are seeing migrants end up in places like Martha's Vineyard, in Colorado, in Denver, and we're watching school districts affirmatively make choices that deprioritize our students. They're redirecting, they're putting students, they're housing them in gyms, they're using facilities that are supposed to be used for children to learn, and our children are the one that are being shortchanged, and I think that's a really underreported element of this problem that the Biden administration created.
Speaking of trouble in schools, an Oakland, California parents group, Parents in Action, now fed up. The San Francisco Chronicle says, quote, parents are fed up with administrative dysfunction, low test scores, strikes, and other upheaval. Now they are organizing to refocus funding and political priorities on academics. I mean, this could be the healthiest thing we've seen for kids in a long time, and it's happening in Oakland.
Trace, I think places like Oakland, the straw that broke the camel's back has broken.
Yeah.
And at this point, people are fed up. And even in places where they supported policies that were destructive and led to where we are, now we're realizing those policies impacted them so negatively. It took a while, but I think people are waking up. Many people have woken up, and we're seeing action. And I think, I hope we see much more of this happening, not just in places like Oakland, but throughout the nation.
And you look at Families in Action, and they posted this on here. This is fascinating, Cole. 1 out of every 10 black students can do math at grade level. 1 of every 10 Latin students, math at grade level. 5 of every 10 Asian students, math at grade level. 6 of every 10 white students. That's an astounding number.
It's astounding. And let's remember, the same people who have been pushing this anti-racism CRT nonsense in our schools, these equity warriors, they are the ones who are actively shortchanging disadvantaged students, minority students. So they're hypocrites. They need to be thrown out with the trash because they don't care about our children. It is only the parents who care about children's academic education.
Fauci said this to students when confronted with misinformation. Stick to the science, Dr. Hamadi.
And I wish they would. But as you said in the Common Sense segment, that the science now doesn't have the meaning that it used to. It used to mean open debate, discussion, people disagreeing and actually settling on what is factual based on a careful, equal examination of all the evidence. That doesn't happen anymore. Now, this science means whatever the people in charge have to say, and if you don't believe it, too bad.
Yeah, it used to be conformity is the enemy of science, and now if you don't buy our science, we just censor you. Yeah. Dr. Hamadi, Nicole Neily, thank you both.